Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're still awake. I know it's late, it's the last day, so please bear with me, go through this presentation. This is the second to the last one. So, my name is Tony Huang. I've been working for FDA for 5 years, most of the time in Office of Process and Facility in OPQ. Today I'm going to talk about the manufacturing process and controls and how to avoid uh, review issues turning into major deficiencies and approvability issues. Um, okay, here is what I'm going to go through. First, I will do some promotion for my office. That's part of my responsibility. Then I'll go through fairly briefly on the major and minor deficiencies, their definitions, and some examples. They are all in the most recent guidance for industry. Then I'll move on to the butter and bread section of this presentation, the case studies. I have 8 cases for you to take a look and consider. And at the end, I'll give some recommendations from my personal perspective. First, I think most of you are aware of the integrated quality assessment review format that the agency kicked off a couple of years ago. This kind of format will maximize each team member's expertise and provide aligned, patient-focused, and risk-based drug product quality recommendations, inclusive of drug substance, products, manufacturing, and facilities. One advantage of this is the closer alliance of CEDAR reviewers and the ORA field investigators will enhance the quality assessment of product, ultimately leading to more effective, efficient, and strong regulatory decisions on the acceptance of facilities and overall approvability of the applications. Okay. What OPF does within the IQA team, basically one thing, we conduct application assessment in coordination with pre and post approval inspections to ensure the manufacturing adequacy to deliver quality products. Please make note that the pre and post approval inspections are both drug application specific. It's not CGMP type of inspection. And the manufacturing assessments include process, facility, and sterility assurance. The review team for ANDA, this is just for ANDA, because our office also review the NDAs, the new drug applications. So for the IQA team within OPQ, you can see that there is the RBPM and an ATL. They were like the leading roles in this team. And also we have drug product reviewer from Office of Life Cycle Drug Product. And biopharma reviewers and drug substance reviewers, both from new drug product office. And an investigator from Office of Regulatory Affairs, ORA. And the other reviewers come from our office. One would be the process and facility reviewer. And in case we have the sterile products, we have a microbiology reviewer from OPF. So OPF work closely with the CEDAR review team. And at the same time, we schedule and even go out on inspections with the ORA colleagues for PAIs and POAIs. And in certain circumstances, we also work with Office of Compliance for CGMP issues and some marketed drugs as well. Then let's move on to the major and minor. I'm sure all of you had received letters from the agency about, you have this major deficiency, you have minor deficiency, and what are they? Um, from the uh, most recent guidance for industry, we have the major amendment definition, which is solicited or unsolidated amendment that contains substantial amount of new data or new information that's not been reviewed by FDA before, and to review them in FDA's judgment. That will require substantial expenditure of FDA resources. And on the so the major deficiency are those deficiencies that when you respond to them will be classified as major amendments. So the logic is kind of weird, I know. So to the contrary of the major amendment are the minor amendment. Typically, those are amendments that doesn't contain so much new information and that requires less FDA resources to review them. So the classification does not reflect the time it takes for you guys to respond. It's based on a determination made by the agency about the time and efforts to assess the application. I can tell you why I have in my personal experience, I had issued a major deficiency. And it's a very strange situation. The firm actually has already made 3 new batches. So right after, like the week after they got the deficiency, they told us, hey, our new batches are ready for you to review. So in those cases, we still regard the amendment as major instead of minor. Okay, so what are the impacts of major deficiencies? I would say all of them are negative. One is that will significantly delay the go dates compared to minor, that only requires 3 months. For the major amendments, it ranges from 6 to 10 months, depending on whether PAI is required or not. And also think about yourself, the efforts and costs. You need to manufacture new batches, do the new bioequivalence study, develop new analytical method, and this whole validation studies. So that's something you want to avoid. Just want to let you know that the classification and definition of the major and minor amendments and deficiencies can go a long time ago to year 2000. You can see that it was so old. At that time, we still use fax. So now we have the 2018 guidance for industry. If you guys haven't noticed, it's one of those copies outside, those display copies that you don't want to steal. So you can always reference this 2018 guidance, and some contests from my slides are really copied from that guidance. So I will go very briefly on those slides. So I guess most of you will have this question: how many major deficiencies has the FDA issued in the past years, and how they distribute across different disciplines? So I did some survey using our internal databases. It's not that accurate, I can tell you, because I didn't see my major deficiencies in those lists. But I think they're in the right ballpark, and the ratios about right. So you can see that for original enders only, you can, you know, from the first day of 2015 to 2019, February, that's by the time I did the survey, we have this amount of CRs issued. And, the total number of CRs from 6 quality disciplines are about 700. And you can see that in this table. And when we consider all submissions, that includes the amendments, such as responses to CR letter and DR letter and supplements. So the number of total CR increased to almost 1,400. And the distribution-wise, you can see that most of them come from drug product, drug substance, facility, and bioequivalence. So since our office cover manufacturing process, facility, and microbiology, so we do have a big chunk of the CRs we issued. And from when you compare those two slides, you can see that the most CR, I would say half of the CRs come from the first round. And, the other half come from the later cycles of the review. And on this slide, you can see that, the status of most those submissions are remain as complete response, which means they're still pending on your side. And which might indicate that our reviewers have done a good job at identifying the hard issues, and the firms cannot resolve them very easily. Here are the examples of major deficiencies. As I said, they are from the Section 3 of the 2018 guidance. This is a very general list. Basically, from a CMC perspective, whenever you are asked to manufacture a new batch, for whatever reason, it will be a major. And other than that, if you are asked to do to perform a new BE study, whether it's related to a new batch or reformulation, it will be a major. Whether when you are required to develop a new analytical procedures and full validation data, that will be major. So the FDA, as always, we have the discretion to consider the responses to additional deficiencies not included in this list as major amendments, as long as our appropriate division director concurs them. And in 2018 guidance, FDA developed a non-exhaustive list of examples in Appendix A. It's the first time that agency has developed such a list for different review disciplines. It's a very good resource. You can always refer to that guide, to those sections, and it covers very well, what we found in our review process. Number one is, I'm not gonna read through them. Just want to point out, you might be confused about number 1 and number 3. What are the difference? One is a major change in drug product manufacturing process. The 3 is significant differences between the process proposed for commercial and batches, in commercial batches and exhibit batches. This is my personal perspective. I think the first one involves with new unit operations, especially the new critical unit operations, such as you switch from wet granulation to dry granulation when you do the commercial batches, or vice versa. For the number 3, it would be the same unit operation, but you might use different methods. One example would be, you do the same laser drilling process, but for exhibit batch, you might use a manual laser drilling, and for commercial, you use auto. Same can be applied to, compression and capsule filling. Those things do happen. And for number 5, change in or lack of information about the form of drug substance. Most of the time, our concern is on the the polymorphic changes. Sometimes when you do the wet granulation process with certain kind of principles, the API polymorph changes that will impact the dissolution and the chemical stability of your final product. And also the number 8, commercial manufacturing at risk by scaling up any unit operation larger than 10 times. Please note that it's about the any unit operation. Any unit operations that adopted in your manufacturing process, your commercial batch size might well below 10, but for some reason, like you use sublots, and you might end up with larger than 10 scale up factor for that specific unit operation, and you will get a major for that. I will have a case study for this kind of, for that example. And also I'd like to let you guys know that the most commonly issued major deficiencies that I see in my survey are number 3, number 7, number 9, and 11. Number 11 is, you might also see this trend in recent years. There are lots of safety concerns on the extractable and leachables for the formulations that we see during the manufacturing process. They're all for liquids or semi-solids, of course. So let's move on to the bread and butter section, the case study. Basically, for the 8 cases, I arranged them from the easy to more difficult, so that will be easier to appreciate, how we do the process assessment by the risk as well, based on risk as well. So this is a ER tablet. It has a matrix designed core and a ER coating on top of it. And then on top of the ER coating, there is a blue color coating. You can see that, the CS1. Okay. Over the color coating, there will be ink imprinted on one side of the tablet for commercial production. However, the 3 exhibit batches were manufactured without the imprint identifier. So our reviewers issued a deficiency, asked the firm to manufacture at least 1 imprinted batch to demonstrate that, one, the imprinting process can be well controlled, and also the imprinted label will not adversely affect the ER functional coating and the dissolution, and also the stability as well. So you can attribute back to number 3 in our list, the significant difference between manufacturing process for exhibit and commercial batches. Case study number 2. This one is very funny. This is an IR capsule. The proposed manufacturing process involves a wet granulation where the sodium hydroxide is used in the granulating fluid. And the API is a free acid. So during the wet granulation process, the free acid will convert to salt form and that will end up in the finished drug product. So based on the drug product labeling, they're not interchangeable. Sorry. How do we go back? Oh, wait. Okay. Oh, thank you. Yes. All right. So the deficiency is that you propose a generic drug product contain the sodium salt form of the API and will not be considered pharmaceutically equivalent to the RLD. And we strongly recommend that you reformulate your drug product and also redevelop a manufacturing process. So for this one, of course, you need to do the new BE study, and also that also indicate that the applicant they are not aware of the change about the drug substance during the manufacturing process. In this case, it's it changed from free acid to salt form. For case study 3, this one is a IR tablet. The manufacturing process involves with dry mixing, wet granulation, drying, milling, lubrication, and compression. And 2 sublots were used in granulation step for exhibit batches. A single lot will be used for commercial batch. And for the exhibit batch, you can see that 2 lots of 7 kilogram of materials were used for granulation, and 1 lot of about 140 kilogram for the commercial production. So it's interesting that in the first review cycle, our reviewer sent an IR with a clarifying question: are you going to use any sublots in your commercial batches? And the response is no, we are not going to use any. So they received a deficiency from us. Basically telling them, you have a 20-fold scale up for the wet granulation process, and you need to provide data from exhibit batches of adequate size. So please know that we did not ask the company to reduce their proposed commercial size. We don't want to do that. We just want them to provide supporting data to support their proposed commercial size. Case study number 4. This one is a drug product for both oral and rectal use. How interesting. So the drug product is manufactured by dissolution, filtration, fitting, and packaging. They did a fairly good extractable leachable study on tubing and filters, and they found the impurity A from both studies. And when we see those impurities, and the company, they proposed a limit for that impurity. When we see that kind of proposal, we do a pharmacotox consult, and the pharmacotox reviewer, they have concerns regarding the proposed safety threshold for rectal use. So in the deficiency, I just I just combine the concerns from two disciplines in one deficiency for our discussion. So the deficiency one is that the conclusion, the safety threshold for impurity A at 552 mu g milligram per day is not acceptable, and the pharmacotox reviewer said, we recommend that you submit non-clinical information or clinical information on prior human experience with impurity A for rectal use, or conduct toxicology study in an appropriate species. Of course, from process side, we have given the company an alternative option. We said, you can consider replacing the current filter or tubing with a more suitable ones, and submit adequate CMC data from 3 new batches manufactured with this new tubing and filter. So this, again, the reason is due to the safety concerns on extractable and leachables. The current status of this case is that the company realized that they proposed a very high safety threshold, and they voluntarily lower the limit from 552 to about 100 based on their data. And our pharmacotox colleagues regarded that acceptable. So this one is resolved. For case study 5, this one is IR tablet of 2 strengths. You can see that it's manufactured by a dry blending and direct compression process. There is a non-functional coating. The batch size of this, for 100 milligram product, they have this 140, 1,400,000, 1.4 million, 1.4 million units. But for 400 products, they have only 45,000 units. So they do give a good justification for this smaller batch size for the 400 product. So the issue with this product is that the final blend is very poor, has a very poor flowability, mostly because the API is a very cohesive material, and the API takes about 70% by weight of the dry blend. So when during the compression, they don't see much issues with the 100 milligram product, but they have a very high percentage of rejection for the 500 tablets, and resulted very low yield, around 60 to 70%. So the firm says, this high online rejection is due to the poor weight variation. It is understandable, and so what the company did was, I think they have very good engineer. They said, we will do some equipment modification. So they add an agitator in the beam blender during the compression, so they will have a more consistent die fitting. So for that, they use that modified blender for one batch, and they got a pretty decent yield, 91% yield. So, but our concern is that you do have this improvement on the yield with some equipment modification. But one, you don't, for that agitator speed and, its operating range is not supported by any development work. It seems pretty random. And we asked them to provide the supporting development data. And also, for regulatory reason consideration, we asked them to manufacture 2 additional 400 milligram strength tablets to demonstrate that the feasibility of consistent compression at this smaller scale. So this will go to the new batches are required due to new process elements added in commercial production and concerns on process robustness. Okay, this one is more fun. I think some of you, when you see this picture, you already have some idea of what product this is, if you are in this area for a long time. This is scored ER tablet with multiple unit pellets, compressed inside the tablets, and between the pellets there are some, extra granular or extra pellets materials like the cushioning agent. For this one, they have something else that could cause the problem as well. What we found in their application is that a noticeable number of OOS in dissolution across all strengths and release and stability for exhibit batches. And majority of OOS results are associated with 8-hour dissolution data, with most cases drug release exceeding the upper limit, and some are less than the lower limit. So it's a pretty random. So there are deficiencies issued from multiple disciplines. The first one is from the drug product reviewer. They said there are OOSs in dissolution and also content uniformity in your release and stability testing. And they also found that in the tablet scoring study report. So they asked the company to manufacture new exhibit batches that at least meet all those quality specifications. And our process reviewer issued a very general deficiency. Basically asked them to do the investigation of the root cause for the failures, and also in their response they need to define all the CCPs, all the material attributes, and provide a comprehensive control strategy. So the reason that the process deficiency is very general is that because the drug product review is finished much earlier than the process review for some reason, and since the outcome is a major, so all the other disciplines will just stop their review and wait for the for the complete response. So this is a very high risk product, one of the most the products with the highest risks in the OGD chemistry history. Okay, study number 7. This one is an IR tablet with a narrow therapeutic index. And it has very low API loading. I think the loading is about, for one strength, is less than 1%. They have multiple strengths. So the manufacturing process involves stepwise geometric mixing, compression, and packaging. is pretty straightforward. In the process blend uniformity, if you just look at the data, they appears acceptable, and good mean and RSD are pretty narrow. However, the sample size is 5 to 10 times of the unit dose. And they also use the USP 905 for the in-process CU control. So what they did is basically they took 10 tablets at the beginning, middle, and the end of the compression process, and they calculate the AV. And this table shows the mean and AV value of this 25 milligram strength. What you're going to see that some AV values are pretty high. It's almost reached get out of the limit, the 14.7. And at the same time, the company is proposing a 10-fold scale up. So when you have this BU data and this CU results, you can definitely know that there is a high risk in CU. So our reviewer caught this issue, and they said, since there is a very high risk in CU for commercial manufacturing, we ask you to provide 3 commercial scale batch data, including BU and CU, and also the release data for lowest 2 strengths and the highest strengths to demonstrate that the proposed process is capable of producing quality drug products. And for this one, the concern is mainly on the CU of this very low loading API product. For the last case, this case, I'd like to present you this case because it involved the not just the process assessment, but also the pre-approval inspection and the facility evaluation of the related facility. This is an ER tablet with functional coating and the laser drilled holes. There's no scale up proposed. The development study was done on manual drill, and it cannot support the critical process parameters adopted in the actual manufacturing process, which is automated laser drill process. The exit batches were poorly characterized, and no data were provided for on the actual laser setting. So that's something we miss in the submission. So at first, IRs were issued in May last year, and with one deficiency specifically asking for development study data using the laser drill, not the manual drill, and how the applicants establish the CPPs and in-process controls, and how they ensure those those in-process controls for laser drilling unit operation. And the applicant responded very quickly, and in the following months, with plenty of actions and updates, they said they will have a program recipe that the operator cannot access, so that will ensure the proper hole size and penetration. And they will have a microscope to examine the hole size, the depth of the hole, and even the shape of the hole. And finally, they said they have a camera system in place to detect the defects and reject the unqualified units. A pre-approval inspection was performed on this facility in July, and the OPF reviewers participated in this PAI. And she found that the firm was not implementing what was stated in the IR response. And she found that 2 critical process parameters for the drilling process were either not monitored or running outside of the qualified ranges. Visual inspection system were not working, and she found that the same issues were observed in other products manufactured in this facility. So the consequence is very severe. There is a process measure. It said, during the inspection, we found you have a serious control issue in the quality system regarding the laser drilling unit operation and visual inspection system. And she asked the company to respond to that deficiency issued earlier, and they need to manufacture 3 new batches. And there are 10 citations on the Form 483. The application is with hold. And the manufacturing facility is got an OAI, official action indicated, which means it's no longer in the compliance status. So it's pretty bad. So when you look at those cases, you feel, it always reminds me of something I read in a book some time ago. It says, be the kind of person catches the shit before it hits the fan, not the one scraping it off afterwards. I'm a guy that when I read something, I always try to visualize it. And I don't think I will be either of those two kind of persons. So I would say maybe the best thing is to avoid all those troubles from the very beginning. That's why we come up with these recommendations. First, spend more efforts on process development and understanding of the risks for each operation on the product quality. Spend more efforts in the front. That's something I found during our reviews and during our inspections. We found this is very common, especially for applicants. Select proper process and equipment for your process. Establish a comprehensive control strategy, including material controls, the critical process parameters, and in-process controls for both exhibit batches and commercial batches. You have to make sure that your registration batches meet the in-process release and stability specifications. That's the base of the approval for your product. If you cannot meet all those specifications you proposed, I would say you will definitely get something, very likely a major deficiency from us. Adequately adjust the operating ranges of skill-dependent process parameters. Do not leave process development work to process validation stage. For process validation, it's confirmed. Your proposed process parameters and in-process controls are valid for commercial production. It's not the place you want to develop and identify your process parameters. And also have facility confirm to the information you submitted, like the case 8. That one will not lead to any good results. And lastly, submit all required information and data for our review. This is a new slide I added at the last minute almost. Those are some questions you want to consider. I'd like to, the reason I decided to add it is that one of our PAI objective is to check the readiness for commercial manufacture. So other than the equipment's aspect, you need to ask yourself, if you can answer all those questions when you decide to submit your application, and if you are ready for inspection. Those are all on the slides. I don't want to go through them one by one. Basically, two things. One is that you need to have your registrations batches that meet all those specifications you proposed. The other is about the scaling up aspect. You have to understand, the principles either of your scaling up process for the unit operations, especially the critical unit operations. And lastly, and most importantly, the people that helped me to put those things together, Edwin Yao, my division director, and Nalaparam Chidabaram, my branch chief, and all other reviewers and colleagues that helped me to identify, to find those information and provide me some consultation during this process.
Thank you, Tony. And Tony